Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Have you ever thought about who Harry Potter's father really was? What if I told you he wasn't the perfect hero many imagine him to be? In today's video, you will find out the shocking truth about James Potter. For Harry, his parents were always a shining ideal, almost like angels in human form. And it makes sense. A boy who lost his family as a baby would naturally idealize them, especially growing up in a home where he was unloved and mistreated by the Dursleys. But what happens if we step away from childhood admiration and look at James Potter objectively? His mother, Lily, was kind-hearted and selfless, but James, he was far from a saint.
Why do I say this? Let me prove it to you.
James Potter was born into a wealthy, respected wizarding family. Unlike the Malfoys or the Blacks, the Potters weren't obsessed with blood purity, but they still valued their lineage. James, however, broke tradition by marrying Lily, a Muggle-born witch, something his ancestors never did. At Hogwarts, James became a Gryffindor, excelling in Quidditch and surrounding himself with a close-knit group of friends, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. He was popular, talented, and full of confidence. He passed his exams effortlessly, relying more on natural ability than hard work. After Hogwarts, he and his friends joined the Order of the Phoenix, fighting against Voldemort. He faced the Dark Lord multiple times, always escaping with his life, until the fateful night when Voldemort came for his son. That night, James was the first to fall. But was he really the noble hero everyone remembers? The truth is, James Potter had flaws that cannot be ignored. He was a troublemaker. At school, James and his friends were notorious pranksters. They caused mischief, spied on classmates, and pulled stunts that often went too far. Even Lily found him arrogant and immature at first. He was arrogant. James took pride in his skills and pure-blood heritage. He never had to struggle for anything, and he wasn't shy about reminding others of that. He even mocked Vernon Dursley, Lily's sister's husband, for his Muggle interests. He bullied Severus Snape. And here's the biggest stain on his legacy, the relentless bullying of Severus. James humiliated him in front of the entire school, knowing full well that Severus was deeply in love with Lily. Can a man who tormented others truly be called a good person? You decide. James Potter's reputation as a hero is undeniable, but his past paints a more complicated picture. His arrogance and reckless behavior weren't just minor personality quirks, they had real consequences. Even his closest friends sometimes questioned his actions. Take, for example, his relationship with Sirius Black. They were inseparable, both gifted and mischievous, but Sirius had a darkness in him, a defiant streak born from years of rebellion against his own pure-blood family. James encouraged it. The two of them, along with Remus and Peter, formed the infamous Marauders, spending their time creating enchanted maps, sneaking out of the castle, and generally making trouble. But not all their pranks were harmless fun. One of the worst moments in James's past was the infamous incident involving Severus Snape and the Whomping Willow. Sirius, in an act of thoughtless cruelty, tricked Severus into going to the Shrieking Shack on the night of a full moon, knowing that Remus Lupin would be there in his werewolf form. If James hadn't intervened at the last moment, Severus would have been killed or turned into a werewolf himself. To his credit, James stopped the prank before it was too late. But the real question is, why did he let things get that far? Why did he allow Sirius to do something so dangerous in the first place? Some say it was loyalty to his best friend. Others believe he simply enjoyed the power he held over Severus, that saving him was just another way to prove his superiority. And it wasn't an isolated incident. James took every opportunity to humiliate Severus, often targeting him in front of large crowds. The worst example of this happened one afternoon by the Black Lake, where James hexed Severus, suspended him upside down in midair, and taunted him as students gathered to watch. Lily Evans tried to intervene, but instead of stopping, James made it even worse. He forced Severus to beg for his wand back, reveling in the moment of control. It was after this incident that Severus, in a fit of humiliation and rage, called Lily a mudblood, the insult that ultimately ended their friendship. Some defend James by saying he was just a teenager, that he eventually grew out of his arrogance. But did he? Even after Hogwarts, he remained confident to the point of recklessness. He married Lily, proving that she had finally seen something in him worth loving, but was that because he truly changed, or because he simply became better at hiding his flaws? Even during the war, James showed a dangerous overconfidence. He knew Voldemort was hunting them. He knew there was a prophecy about his son, yet he still took risks. He trusted Peter Pettigrew with his family's location, despite warnings that someone close to them was a traitor. He believed in his own ability to protect his wife and child, even though every sign pointed to the opposite. On the night of his death, James didn't even have his wand in hand. He was caught off guard, unprepared for the reality of the danger he had always played down. He rushed at Voldemort without a chance of winning, leaving Lily and Harry defenseless. His bravery in that moment was undeniable, but some would argue that his arrogance, his belief that things would always go his way, was what ultimately doomed his family. It's uncomfortable to question the legacy of someone so deeply tied to Harry's story. We want to believe in clear heroes and villains, in noble parents, and evil dark lords. But James Potter wasn't just a hero, he was a flawed, complicated man, and ignoring that does a disservice to his memory. Perhaps the real tragedy of James Potter isn't just how he died, but how little we truly know about who he was. Harry grew up with an idealized version of his father, learning about him only through those who loved him. But what if he had heard other stories? What if he had met people who saw James not as a courageous leader, but as an entitled bully? Would it have changed the way he saw himself? The truth is, James Potter was many things: a loyal friend, a talented wizard, a fearless fighter. But he was also arrogant, reckless, and at times cruel. Maybe that's what makes him such an interesting figure. He wasn't perfect, and in many ways that makes his story even more compelling. So was he a good man? That depends on how you define good. He fought for what was right, but he also hurt people along the way. He died protecting his family, but his mistakes helped put them in danger. In the end, James Potter remains one of the most fascinating characters in the wizarding world, not because he was flawless, but because he